Now I want to bring in my guest here with me in New York, Abby Phillip, national political reporter for The Washington Post. And joining from Austin, Texas is Avik Roy, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. And Avik, I'm going to start with you. Republican voters have been pretty definitive, very definitive, in fact, on what they think should happen if Trump does not get the nomination, even though he's got the most votes going into the convention. Let's look at a couple of those numbers from the NBC Wall Street Journal poll. Republican voters on the process, 62% say the candidate with the most votes should be the nominee. Only 33% say that it should be up to the delegates. And let's go to the next one, which is, what do GOP voters think should happen if Donald Trump is denied the nomination? 45% say it would be acceptable for him to run third party as an independent if he didn't get it. And let's just go one more. And this is on whether he loses the nomination. 54% say that it's one more. If Donald Trump has the most delegates but doesn't get the nomination. Avik, in your view, can the Republican Party in any way afford to deny Donald Trump the nomination if he has the most delegates, even if it's not 1237?
Well, they have a difficult choice, Joy, but I would say the opposite, that they can't afford for Trump to be the nominee. Because if Trump is the nominee, then Republicans down ballot in Senate and congressional races are going to get crushed. That's what the polling indicates. They're basically hosed either way. So I think what Republicans should do if Trump doesn't win it on the first ballot, which looks likely, is if the second ballot goes to Cruz, look, a lot of those voters, as your reporting shows, will stay home. I think the Republicans are in a very difficult place. They can't win either way. It's a heads you win, tails I lose situation.
Yeah, and Avik, you know, there is this possibility that Donald Trump is floating out there of potentially really chaotic, if not violent, convention response if he doesn't get the nomination. Ted Cruz, on the other hand, is actually doing the things that you have to do to win a nomination. He's actually going back into these caucus states. He's winning these state conventions. He's doing it the right way. Why then doesn't the Republican establishment want to just coalesce behind him, somehow get all of the anti-Trump energy to go behind Ted Cruz? He is someone who ran, someone who's won delegates, and someone who's won states. Why isn't he getting the consolidation?
He's getting some of it, so there are many people who have come out in support of Ted Cruz, but as you said, there are a lot of people who aren't. Maybe it's because they haven't liked him because of all the things he said about the railing against the Washington cartel. But I think as time goes on, and I think Paul Ryan's statement the other day was helpful in this regard, as the so-called establishment of the donor class realizes they really don't have an alternative that's democratically viable to Ted Cruz, I think they will come around to Ted Cruz as the best option.
All right, well, let's move over to the Democrats, because if it's gotten crazy on the Republican side with sort of the chaos of trying to figure out who will be the nominee, it's really gotten quite nasty on the Democratic side. This is George Clooney then talking to Chuck Todd on Meet the Press about what the purpose of that fundraiser was. Take a listen.
The Clinton campaign has not been very good at explaining is this, and this is the truth. The overwhelming amount of money that we're raising, and it is a lot, but the overwhelming amount of the money that we're raising is not going to Hillary to run for president. It's going to the down ticket. It's going to the congressmen and senators to try to take back Congress. And the reason that's important, and the reason it's important to me, is because we need, I'm a Democrat, so if you're Republican, you're going to disagree, but we need to take the Senate back, because we need to confirm a Supreme Court justice, because that fifth vote on the Supreme Court can overturn Citizens United and get this obscene, ridiculous amount of money out, so I never have to do a fundraiser again.
I mean, what do you make of the fact that on the Sanders side of the ledger here, that argument is not compelling? There is this idea that raising money in any way, even if it's for down ballot, is sort of de facto evil.
Well, there's a lot going on here. First of all, I think the Sanders supporters are very skeptical of the DNC and of the state parties who they believed from the very beginning have had the deck stacked against them and have been sort of tacitly supporting Secretary Clinton. And this arrangement that George Clooney just explained is very unusual to be happening in a primary. I mean, usually this is something that you do in a general election, because it's assuming to a certain extent that this money is going to be shared in a general election with the nominee. So I think Sanders supporters are skeptical. They don't see the benefit of pouring money into a state party that they think is against them. But at the same time, I mean, the Clinton campaign has been able, luckily for them, to use this argument to justify these large sums of money, which, you know, I mean, as George Clooney said, many people believe is obscene. I mean, $300,000 to co-host that event. Even though, as he said, the money is some of it going to state parties, actually the vast majority of it is going to the Clinton campaign, at least at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe later on we'll see something
very quickly,
different.
last word, we are out of time, Avik, but does this just hearten Republicans to see that essentially it looks like almost an unbreachable gap between the Sanders and Clinton voters that could benefit your party in the fall?
Well, it's the other way around. I think a lot of Republicans are saying we have the Democratic nominee is going to be the least popular Democratic nominee in a long time, and Republicans probably won't be able to take advantage of it. And by the way, I think George Clooney was doing these kinds of fundraisers before Citizens United came down, so I'm not sure that if Citizens United is overturned, he's going to stop doing fundraisers for the Democratic Party.
All right. Well, Abby Phillip.